For the first time as a YouTuber that covers the NFL, I am questioning my mortality. I am questioning my ability to withstand another Kansas City Super Bowl. I can't believe I'm even saying it. I can't believe I'm believing it. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Bills again. Again. For the fourth time in the playoffs. 32-29. The Chiefs win the AFC Championship. A game that many are calling the Super Bowl. And I know I'm expected to come on here and talk about and back up because I'm a man of my word. I'm expected to make a video about the Kansas City Chiefs being the greatest dynasty of all time. Better than my Patriots. But I don't want to do a disservice to Chiefs Kingdom just yet, because they still do have to win the Super Bowl for me to make that video. Because if I make that video and then they don't win the Super Bowl, I just look like a bigger jabroni than I already look right now. So for all of you jabronis that tuned into this video expecting that, I'm going to say, hold up, because you still got to beat Saquon, okay? And the Eagles are no easy victory. I will say that. Now, I will be picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I absolutely will be, because I felt like the winner of this game is going to win the Super Bowl. And I'm not sure I have enough faith in Jalen Hurts in a big game. I'm not sure I have enough faith in Nick Sirianni compared to Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. And there's going to be many things discussed about this game in terms of, was it rigged? Was it not? The refs. A couple of key calls in this game. There's no doubt about it. And it kind of sucks. And that's honestly what I'm most frustrated about when it comes to this game. Is not that the Chiefs won, but that it ultimately always seemingly with them comes down to some sort of ref, call, decision, eye test. Literally, that's what it was. A spotting of the football might have determined the outcome of this game. The Bills up one with an ability to extend their lead were stopped despite there being visual evidence of them getting a first down on social media. And they therefore say that the play stands. And the Chiefs get the ball. I kind of feel like it was the wrong call. I did at the moment. I felt like Allen got enough progress for the first down. And I'm not going to be immature and suggest that that play is the only reason Buffalo lost. We'll get to the bigger reason in a minute. But that was a really big play. And ultimately, that did have a huge impact on the game. What if Buffalo scores a touchdown on that drive? Or even a field goal? How does that change the game? The momentum, especially, of the game. Right? And the worthy catch, that wasn't a catch. I mean, I thought it was incomplete. I didn't think it was an interception. But I certainly didn't think it was a catch. And they said that stood. So, like, again, guys, I don't want to be that guy. I don't. But it has to be discussed. Like, every single time. And it kind of sucks because in my comment section, it's 99% on that video about the AFC Championship game and who's going to win in my prediction. And I broke the game down. And some things happened in that game that I expected and some things didn't. And the outcome of the game that ultimately did take place is not too far off from what I would have expected if I would have picked the Chiefs. And ultimately, I expected a very close game. But it just sucks that 95% of the comments on that video were some way, shape, or form, the refs are going to influence this game in Kansas City's favor. And ultimately, no matter if you think the Chiefs were the better team or not in this game, they still got the benefit of the calls. Which I get it, they're the home team, but at the same time, it's like, as somebody that analyzes the NFL and wants to look at the game as the 11 on 11, not 12 on 11, right? This is not Seattle's 12th man. This is something a little bit different here. I want to be able to talk about a game, especially one like that was so good, so entertaining, so back and forth, had me biting my nails, had me tearing my hair out, had me not being able to watch, covering my eyes on occasion. You know, as good as that game was, how emotionally invested I was in the game, this was a very fun game to stream because this was one of the most nerve-wracking games I've ever streamed. It hasn't really been since Tom Brady was playing that I've had a moment like that, I would say. A little bit with the Niners last year against the Lions, but not as much as this game. It really felt like, for me as a streamer, a YouTuber, or somebody that does not have their team involved in a big game, this was probably as much heart-pounding that I've had in a game as somebody. And it was actually very awkward for me to call the game without having any bias or trying to have any bias. I was actually trying to maintain my composure throughout the entire game, and I think people would realize that when they watch the stream. But man, it was tough. It was a new experience. But ultimately, we're going to talk about the calls. But I felt like the ultimate story of the game and the ultimate difference between the teams was not the quarterbacks. It definitely was not. It was not even the defenses, as poorly as Buffalo's played. It was the coaching. At the end of the day, it was Andy Reid, it was Steve Spagnuolo out-coaching Joe Brady and Sean McDermott. That was the outcome. I actually felt like throw for throw, play for play, Josh outplayed Patrick Mahomes. In terms of quality of throws in the game. I mean, I can't think of like 2 throws that Pat made where I was like, my God, that was a great throw. That was an outstanding tight window pass. And that's exactly where you get into, it's all coaching. Like Andy Reid, how many times do they call mesh or some version of mesh where you've got guys crossing and some sort of action from the running back? That play, that concept must have operated for how many first downs, how many touchdowns, how many big third down conversions in this game? And every single one of them was wide open. Like Pat, the best throw he probably made was the flukiest throw he made. The throw to not Marquise, but Worthy on the catch that wasn't a catch. That was probably his best throw of the game. There was another, maybe the 2-point to Watson, decent. There wasn't a lot of throws in this game where you're like, wow, Pat just put that in a tight window. There was a number of those for Josh. Now, I will give Pat a lot of credit for his scrambling. I thought that his runs were huge in this game. Obviously, he scored 2 touchdowns. He doesn't know how to spike the ball, so some Chief fan, please inform him how to do that. Gronk, spike the like button, or Kelsey, spike it, if you haven't already, okay? Subscribe if you're new and you're just finding this video. And I'm really just going through my heart, my soul. I'm going through my emotions of talking about this game. And it hurts. I'm not heartbroken by any means. I feel like I was much more heartbroken when the Niners lost to the Chiefs last year. I think I'm a little stunned. I think that's where I'm at. because I honestly thought the Bills were going to win this game. I do feel like they very much could have won this game. Even the last play of the game, as I'm seeing it on my TV right now, or not the last play of the game, but the last play of the game ultimately for Buffalo on offense, where Kincaid dives for the catch and it just goes off his right arm and it's incomplete on one of the most incredible throws, falling backwards against a free blitzer running straight at him. Josh Allen off his back foot throws a floater to Dalton Kincaid that is dropped similarly to Mark Andrews. My friend texts me his idol is Mark Andrews, in fact, and I feel bad for Dalton Kincaid. But, hey, man, I'll just say this. As a Pats fan, you Chiefs fans are even way luckier than we ever were, bro. Like, if that were the Patriots, the guy would have caught it on his toe. The guy would have caught it with, somehow over his shoulder, nearly out of bounds. The guy would have caught it on his helmet. The guy would have kicked it up in the air off his right foot, his left foot, and then caught it. Whether it be Jermaine Kearse or it be Mario Manningham or David Tyree or whoever, it felt like the Patriots had some bad luck in their dynasty. And of course, the Chiefs are not as deep as the Patriots got eventually, and so they were due for some bad luck. But to me, like, Kansas City, it just feels like every play these last few years has gone their way. It's gone their direction. You can count that as coaching. You can count that as preparation. You can count that as level of play from their quarterback or Chris Jones or their defense. I'm not sure. But, man, they are fortunate. So fortunate. Just one or two ref calls in this game might have changed the tide. And ultimately, they got those too. It's pretty outstanding how that works. But to me, like, the coaching was the difference. Whether it be Andy Reid's play calling compared to Joe Brady's. Whether it be the continual quarterback tush pushes that just were not that effective. Even if you thought he got the first down, they continuously tried to run this play that was not working for them. Why not try a different run of the quarterback? Why not try something a little bit different? Maybe an empty formation. Just run Josh right up there. Get the back. Lead him through. Do something a little bit different. Get him a head start. Or run James Cook, who is probably running for 6 yards a carry in this game. The early first drive of the game, Buffalo, that was kind of a weird sequence. They didn't go to James Cook on that first drive. That kind of reminded me of the Detroit Lions. Not giving the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs against Washington and how that kind of turned the game in terms of the direction of how it was played and the game management. I thought the Chiefs started this game much more exquisitely. They were executing much crisper, and they were not making as many mistakes despite the fumble that Patrick Mahomes did have. And even in that, Mahomes had more turnovers in this game than Josh Allen, and that's not something that I would have expected if the Chiefs would have won. Allen actually started pretty nervous in this game. I thought that the first drive, a couple throws that were dicey, a little early on, he kind of felt a little not confused necessarily, but a little unsure of himself or maybe a little antsy. But he settled into the game very well, and James Cook helped him do that. He had 6.5 yards per carry, and the Bills lost this game. For James Cook to only receive the ball 13 times on the ground is pretty pathetic, in my opinion. How do you not give him the ball more? We were talking about this in the preview about how the Bills should be able to run the ball, and if the Eagles are looking for a source of hope in the Super Bowl, it should be the fact that James Cook and this running game had 6.5 yards a clip and 2 touchdowns with James Cook. And Saquon has been the best running back maybe ever that I've ever seen in a season. And he has the best O-line arguably in football. And they've got the dimension of Jalen Hurts as well. So there could be an avenue there for the Eagles. But continuing, man, I thought Worthy, the rookie, stepped up big time. Well, the difference in this game might have been who the Bills chose at wide receiver. People forget about that, right? Didn't they choose Keon Coleman, or they traded back? Worthy was selected by the Chiefs, and Keon Coleman was selected by the Bills. And Coleman did next to nothing in this game, including one of the weirdest play calls of the game where they try to fade to him on a 3rd and goal against Trent McDuffie. It's a little odd. Xavier Worthy had 6 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. Very, very dynamic in the screen game. Difficult to cover. He worked the outside pretty well on some stop routes, and he worked those crossers like Rashee Rice did a year ago. And Worthy, was good. Good in this game. Had a touchdown, 85 yards, 6 catches, and was one of the best players in this game, Mac Hollins, I got to give a shout out to him. Durkant's boy played unbelievable. 3 catches, arguably the 2 best thrown balls of the game by Josh Allen. 2 Mac Hollins, 1 for a touchdown, 1 that put them inside the 3. He had 24 yards per catch, 73 yards, 3 catches, 4 targets, 1 touchdown. He was really good in this game. I thought this was a really well-played game, man. I thought Kareem Hunt played hard despite an only 3.8 yards per carry. I thought he played hard, had a number of big conversions. Late in the game, he helped them out, but 17 carries, 64 yards. Early in the game, he was very successful as well. Kelce actually was pretty quiet. I don't think people would have expected Kelce to be as quiet as he was in the Chiefs' win. I want to actually look up what his stats were in this game because I'm not sure he had more than 30 yards, to be honest. I'm not sure that he had more than 30 yards. Let's see. So, Kelce had 2 for 19 yards. Juju had 2 huge plays after the catch. Hollywood got the offense going early. I thought the opening script and the first couple drives by the Chiefs were expertly called by Andy Reid. A lot of play action and RPOs and run game involved. A lot of quick throws and quick reads for Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes carried the ball 11 times in the game, which is something that I wouldn't have expected. I would have expected about 5 or 6. And Mahomes had more rushing yards than Josh Allen, which is not something I would have expected either. Now, Patrick was held to a modest day through the air of 245 and a touchdown. But if you watch the game, the Bills had few answers for Kansas City's offense. Whether it be the Chiefs moving the pocket constantly, the Chiefs screen game, the Bills' ability to hit and tackle and make impactful hits, like just from a physicality standpoint, it felt like the Bills were just, the defense just lacks a certain pop to it, I would say. Matt Milano did have a big sack in this game, late in the game. Von Miller had a key pressure late in the game, but not a lot of pass rush from the Bills. But I will say, like, a lot of the Chiefs offense, you can't really get after the quarterback because they don't really ask Pat to hang back there. And oftentimes when he is hanging back there in the pocket, those are plays that don't work out for the Chiefs. Often the longer Pat holds the ball, the worse the play gets this year, typically. I thought Chris Jones was very disruptive in this game. Despite not registering a sack, I thought he was very, very good. I thought that Nick Bolton had a few plays. Justin Reed had a couple plays. McDuffie had a couple plays. He did get beat by Hollins for a touchdown. But overall, decent. I didn't think the Chiefs' defense was really that great either. I thought that the Bills, overall were able to move the ball, score points. They had more total yards than the Chiefs in the game. They punted only twice, right? The Chiefs actually, the Bills had 4 conversions on 4th down. The Bills had more penalties, more yards on penalties, more time of possession. So, I mean, relatively, offense was relatively even. I think the difference was short yardage a couple times with the Bills. That call was critical. 3rd down, the Bills were held 5 for 14. It felt like everything for Buffalo was a bit more difficult. Just a little bit, right? Their O-line played solid, but not great. The Chiefs were able to get a couple blitzes in occasionally. When they went to their 4-man rush, they weren't really getting home on Josh. He seemed to have time to make those throws, but their coverage was much better than Buffalo. And I think a big element was Christian Benford getting injured early. Benford getting injured and Kaiir Elam getting in the game. He was terrible. He was dreadful. He didn't deserve to be on that field. Mahomes and Andy Reid continuously picked on him throughout the day, and he was bad. There's no doubt about it. Benford would have turned this game. He would have turned and changed the game, and that was part of my prediction, right? But you got to think he had a concussion. There was always a possibility he could leave the game. Taylor Rapp was already out, which did hurt the defense. But ultimately, I think the game came down to a few play calls by the Chiefs that were not made by the Bills, a couple bad play calls by the Bills, a couple, calls by the refs, a couple things like that. I mean, red zone, 2-point conversions. Buffalo went for 2 points twice, and they didn't get either one. The Chiefs went for 2 points once, and they got it. Like, things like that were the difference in the game, honestly. Like, the Bills' poor play calling choices. I thought Spags outcoached McDermott. And I think this is one of the headlines of the game, is ultimately, as good as McDermott is as a coach, as solid as he's been, as influential as he's been on Buffalo, I feel like it's time for him. I know that they can't really replace him right now with a guy that you would be super ecstatic about. Like, I'm not exactly sure which direction you would go if you were to fire McDermott right now, unless you could somehow get Bill Belichick out of college to coach the NFL. Like, Mike Vrabel has already, been assigned to a team. Ben Johnson is gone. Liam Cohen took a job, right? Like, some of the best candidates, unless you're attracted to somebody like Cliff Kingsbury or Mike McCarthy, Doug Peterson, like somebody like that. Even Pete Carroll got a job, like an established coach. I don't see how they move on from Sean McDermott, despite, again, in a big, huge game, not necessarily making the wrong calls. I didn't think that them going for 2 was the wrong choice, but I feel like ultimately he's in another good game with a big game with Andy Reid, a big game with Steve Spagnuolo, and his defense was the worst of the two, and he got worked by Andy Reid again, right? Like, again. So, like, for the third time out of the last 4 years or whatever it is, the Chiefs had their best offensive game of the season against Sean McDermott's defense. Again. Right? And it's not like the run game was solid for Kansas City, but it was not overwhelming. A lot of it had to do with the backbreaking scrambles. A lot of it had to do with the quick throws and the scheme. There were so many open players throughout the game for Patrick Mahomes. It was not difficult. On the other hand, you just saw better coaching from Spags. The 4th and 5 is a big example. I don't care who the quarterback is there. He's got to get rid of the ball. Josh had to escape. There's 2 guys running at him. I don't care. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, John Elway, Aaron Rodgers, doesn't matter. At their peak, like, that guy's got to get rid of that ball. He's just got to chuck it and pray and hope that his receiver can make a play. And unfortunately, his receiver dropped the ball. But, like, Spags had them keyed in on that tush push, which is interesting for next week. Now, the Eagles are a different animal when it comes to that, but I will say that is interesting, right? And it's also interesting that the Chiefs played the Eagles in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, to have that preparation for this game. And that is, again, institutional knowledge of being in so many big games and understanding your opponent so well. And Reid had more curveballs and more change-ups than McDermott in this game and his staff. And I thought this was one of the more underwhelming Joe Brady called games. Didn't think it was a bad game, but in some critical scenarios, I felt like it was maybe a little bit too conservative, a little bit not downfield oriented enough. I thought they kind of shied away from the run game a little bit at points. That didn't really make a lot of sense, specifically James Cook, who was maybe their MVP in this game. Of course, the MVP for the Chiefs was the refs, but that's expected. 32-29, man. What else do I got to say about it? A lot of you said the Chiefs would win. I give you credit. I will admit I was wrong. I guaranteed the Bills to win this game. I thought this was the Bills' year to win the Super Bowl before the playoffs started. I did not pick them to win the Super Bowl before the year. But just the way the season had been going, the way that I felt like they matched up with Kansas City, and I felt like a lot of that came true, man. I did. This was a great football game. This could have went either way, and I think Chiefs fans will realize that. But at the same time, there have been consistent themes in these matchups, and the biggest of which, in my opinion, has come down to coaching. You know, people are going to say what they want about Josh Allen, but I think, once again, he didn't turn it over. I thought that he got a little bit let down by some of his players around him. I thought he got let down by some of his coaches and certainly his defense once again. But it's again, like, I thought that you can't really ask for more, right? It's 32-29. The Bills defense does get somewhat of a stop, forcing a field goal in the red zone. It's 32-29. The Bills have the ball. A touchdown wins them the game. That's what they were setting up for. They even could have gotten to field goal range and tied the game up, possibly, right? 4th and 5, game on the line, and it's not Josh's fault, but it's definitely the Buffalo Bills underwhelming in those big spots in this game. 2 points, 4th and 5, 4th downs in general, just underwhelming. So, great game. Patrick Mahomes played well. Chiefs O-line played well. Andy Reid had a great game plan. Spagnuolo didn't have like his best game ever, but I thought that he made a lot of critical calls at the right time, as he typically does. And the Chiefs do it again, man. They're back in the Super Bowl. Three-peat is much more alive than I would have ever thought. Three-peat, just to me, guys, at the end of the day, is just something that we've never seen as fans. And it's just very hard to believe that that's even possible. So the fate of the Chiefs this year has more been about history and more been about how they've played, you know, considering their point differential, you know, and things like that. Just the style. And then the hate stems from just the way they, like, it's just dull. It's boring. I'm tired of it. I think I don't like a lot of the individuals on the team. We can get into that if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, and we could talk about that in that video. Or if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, we can even talk about that in a different fashion. But now you guys got to stop Saquon. So good luck with that. That's not going to be easy. But you faced the Eagles before. It's funny because you've played in 4 Super Bowls. Three that you've won. And now this could be the 4th that you win. Outside of the lone Tom Brady Bucs team, you've played the same team 4 times, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if the Eagles, who did beat you guys last year in the regular season, can they step up to the plate and win the game? It should be a very good game. It should be back and forth. The Eagles are the most talented roster in the NFL. They probably have the best defense in the NFL. They probably have the best O-line and run game in the NFL. So it's not going to be easy for the Chiefs. But it did feel like the winner of the Super Bowl will come out of the AFC because the quarterback ultimately would make a huge difference, whether it be Josh Allen in Buffalo, whether it be Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. That being said, the Chiefs hold a substantial coaching edge when it comes to 2 weeks of preparation entering a Super Bowl. So now let's transition to Philadelphia, who I just said 55 points in an NFC Championship. I'm not sure what the record is, but that is a pretty high number. I'm not sure many teams in an NFC or AFC title game have scored 55 points. I mean, that's probably in the top 5 most points scored in a conference championship game, if I'm not mistaken. 55 is a shit ton of points, all right? And the Washington Commanders upset the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They upset the Detroit Lions, and we're not even really close to beating the Eagles in this game. Now, I will say that the Commanders had their opportunities to make this game competitive. They did fumble the ball 3 times in the game, all right? And that was huge. Without those fumbles, I think this game is much closer on the scoreboard, but the Eagles were certainly the better team here. They had more first downs, 28-22. They had less third downs where they had to convert. Washington was 7 for 17. Philly was 50%, 5 for 10. Philly was also 1 for 1 on 4th down. Washington, we knew would go for it on 4th a lot. Now, the thing for the Eagles is they're playing a less aggressive team next week in Kansas City, and that might help their defense if Kansas City does not turn their decision-making in terms of maybe Kansas City will be more aggressive because it's a Super Bowl, and they were fairly aggressive against Buffalo, but not like super aggressive. But Washington 4 for 6. Washington was just one of those teams like Detroit that was going to go for the fourth down pretty much every single time, right? 459 yards, almost 460 yards for Philadelphia, 230 passing, 229 rushing. Some from Jalen Hurts, a lot from Saquon, a little bit from Kenny Gainwell. The Eagles held Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson, and the team to under 100 yards rushing, 350 yards for Washington on the day. And I would say, and an interception at the end by Jaden Daniels. 9 penalties on Washington as well. Only 1 punt by Washington, though. And it did feel like Washington moved the ball at moments pretty successfully, especially in quick game, especially on the quick outs and things like that. The one-on-ones with Zach Ertz. I could see Travis Kelce having a pretty good Super Bowl game. I do think that the Chiefs' ability to quick dice you up underneath is going to be a huge factor in the game. I think the Chiefs will likely struggle to run the ball super consistently. I do think that the receivers for the Chiefs are probably at a disadvantage against a much better secondary in Philadelphia than Buffalo. And this Philly defense is much better than the Bills. It's more physical. It's bigger up front. They've got better pass rushers. They've got better corners. They've got a better defensive coordinator in Vic Fangio, right? So this is going to be a huge challenge. And I think the big thing looking at last Super Bowl game between the Eagles and the Chiefs was that the Eagles, they were the more talented team on paper, clearly. I thought they would win that game when I predicted it. It could have went either way. It came down to pass interference to Juju, right? And again, another ref call deciding a Chiefs game, not surprised. It also came down to special teams. It came down to a return by Kadarius Toney, I believe, right? It came down to a fumble from Jalen Hurts that was returned for a touchdown. Mahomes had under 200 yards in the game. A couple of Mahomes runs, but the Chiefs offense really wasn't like super amazing in the game. It was a lot of special teams. The Eagles ripped the Chiefs up. They threw the ball. Jalen Hurts threw the ball exceptionally well in that game against man a lot of the time. And Dallas Goedert had a huge game. A.J. Brown had a few big catches, Devontae Smith. And that will be interesting because Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, which one do you cover with Trent McDuffie? Who takes on the task of Dallas Goedert with the worst defense against tight ends in football? You've got Saquon as another dimension to deal with, and you're going to have to sell out to that, even more so than you sold out to Miles Sanders in the last time you played them, right? So in some ways, the Eagles on the surface might not appear to be playing better football than they did 2 years ago. They might not appear to be a better team than 2 years ago with the amount of sacks and pressure the Eagles put on that season, with the dominant offensively. And Jalen Hurts generally was a better player 2 years ago. But in this game, the Eagles do seemingly have the added dimension of Saquon. They do have a talented offense. They do have a defense that I would say is going to be better prepared for Patrick Mahomes, specifically because Fangio was in that division, right? There's going to be a lot of crossover between their matchups in Denver. And Denver didn't do a bad job all the time against Patrick Mahomes in that division. So I do think that the Eagles defense is not going to be a complete embarrassment like it was in that game in Arizona. So that is interesting. That's kind of a wild card, a joker in this game, but there's not a lot to say about the NFC Championship. I thought Hurts did play his best game of the playoffs. He was 20 for 28, 248 and a touchdown. I thought he played very efficient football. He didn't hold on the ball as long. He threw the ball away much better. He kept the offense on pace much better. Saquon did get dinged up in this game, which seemingly affected the offense at a moment, but 15 carries, 118 yards, 7.9 yards per carry. The first run of the game was a touchdown, which was ridiculous. A.J. Brown had his best game of the playoffs, 6 for 96 and a touchdown. Devontae Smith had a few catches. Dallas Goedert had a few catches. Seemingly the Eagles looked a lot closer to the form at their peak of the regular season offensively. That was, though, against a defense that was poor against the run during the regular season. That was not a very good defense in general, right? But Dan Quinn is a good coordinator. They do, cover a lot of man-to-man, a lot of blitzing, things that might give Jalen Hurts some issues at times. You look at Spags and what he's able to do with some of his creative blitz packages. That could ultimately be the difference if the Chiefs do win that game. We'll break that down in further in future videos, but I just didn't think, I thought that the Eagles were really well prepared for Washington's offense. The screen game was rejected for the most part. Jaden Daniels running was still an issue in moments. And that maybe could be something for Mahomes, but like Jaden Daniels is a little bit different in terms of that regard. Terry McLaurin, had a breakaway touchdown. Zacchaeus and Diami had some catches. Zach Ertz was really good in the game. I thought he played a super admirable game. But ultimately, Washington just 23 points, not bad, but not nearly good enough. And some fourth down stops, some turnovers, stunted the game for Washington. It's hard for me to erase the Chiefs and Bills game, after watching that after this game. But, Saquon, 3 touchdowns, I thought that there was some stuff for the Chiefs to look at on this tape from Washington. But Washington has been a better offense for a majority of the year than the Chiefs. I do think that there'll be a relatively similar approach to how to attack the Eagles, though. So that's interesting, just given how they play. Both teams play. Their running back run game has been a little bit less than desired, but Washington's at moments this year has been very effective. Both teams are quick pass, screen, yards after catch oriented. Both quarterbacks are extremely creative and composed under pressure. Philadelphia has had a good challenge here, and I think the game will ultimately come down to, in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts, the ability to throw the ball against the Chiefs. Because I think Saquon will have some success, but I don't expect the Chiefs to just allow him to run down their throats. That would be shocking. So, yeah, the Eagles win 55-23. I know that this preview, or this recap, was more about the Chiefs, about the Eagles, but there's not really a lot to say about Washington other than the fact that they proved me wrong all season. They did not prove me wrong in this game, but they proved me wrong all season. They, outlasted my expectation. They went further than I would have ever dreamed of. Before the season, I thought they would be terrible. I thought Jaden Daniels would be underwhelming as a rookie. I thought Dan Quinn was not a good hire. I thought Cliff Kingsbury was inspiring, but, iffy. I thought the roster wasn't quite there. So I give Washington a ton of credit from their coaching to Jaden Daniels, to their performance, to their execution. All year, they proved me wrong. They played really well. They should have a bright future. Now, the question will be, does Washington get better next year? That's always a huge question. I'm not so sure. It's not that easy, but the quarterback, the kid, gives them a chance. Shout out to Zach Ertz, man. I just can't stop him thinking about how good Zach Ertz was in the game, despite losing. And he's 1,000 years old. But it'll be Andy Reid versus his former franchise, his former team, once again in the Super Bowl to try to win his 4th championship, right? And it'll be the fourth game against the same team, which is so weird. But the Chiefs have a chance to do something that's never been done in the history of the NFL. So I'm looking forward to seeing that game, breaking that game down. I need a break thinking about the NFL. I will probably make a video tomorrow. I have to do a Bleacher Report live stream, but I just need a quick refresh. I need a sleep, man. I need a good sleep tonight to just get over this Bills loss, to move forward, and be excited about the Super Bowl. Because honestly, man, the Super Bowl matchup to me, I'm trying to talk myself into it, but it is rather depressing. It is rather annoying. It would be the best word. It's just a matchup that, yeah, sure, I could cheer for Saquon. Undoubtedly, I'll pick the Chiefs, but it's, man, I just kind of wanted something a little different. I wanted Josh in there, man. I wanted even Lamar. I would have taken Lamar in there. And I really thought that those were the teams this year, not Kansas City. But ultimately, they proved me wrong again. And they do it again. Thanks to the refs. Thanks, guys, for watching. Gronk, spike the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Peace.